Today, in this explainer, we're diving into a transformation story that's gonna absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about pure craftsmanship, unbelievable patience, and a process so detail-oriented that it takes something looking literally like a piece of trash and turns it into a premium masterpiece. It's not just a manufacturing process, it's the raw art of turning nature into luxury. Just picture this. On one side, you've got this incredibly rough, uneven, and let's be honest, dirty, raw buffalo horn, and on the other, just some simple, unstructured pieces of leather. If you saw these sitting on a workshop table, you'd probably think there is absolutely no connection between them. In their natural state, they both look so unpromising and ordinary. You would never guess where they're heading. So that brings us to the big question, right? How exactly do these completely unrelated raw materials transform into a premium luxury purse? How does a dull, scratchy piece of horn become a glossy designer panel? Okay, let's dive into this and walk through this magical workshop journey step by step. Before a single tool is even picked up, we hit our very first stage. Step 1, the critical inspection. The raw horn has to be intensely evaluated because, every single piece is unique and completely unpredictable. The artisan is looking closely at the naturally curved surface, checking for visible dirt, but the absolute most crucial thing they're hunting for, hidden cracks or weak areas. They're also taking exact length and weight measurements. And this step is critical because if they miss a defective section here, the material will absolutely crack later on when it's exposed to heavy heat, pressure, or polishing. Literally, one tiny oversight can destroy all the hard work. Once it passes inspection, the material gets a good cleaning. But here's the catch. They completely avoid hard metal brushes. Why? Because metal would leave permanent scratches on the natural horn. Instead, they use a soft brush and a simple damp wipe. This gentle initial cleaning allows the craftsman to finally see the horn's original surface and natural color hiding right underneath all that dirt and grime. Now that we've got a clean canvas, it's time to move to the next phase. Step 2, taming the material. This is where a wild piece of nature finally starts taking shape. And taming this material? It is not easy. First, they identify a structurally sound and relatively flat section. Then they draw the cutting and boundary lines. But pay close attention to this third crucial detail, leaving intentional extra material. A master craftsman never cuts exactly on the boundary line right away. The logic is simple. Cutting directly to the final size is far too risky. You need margins for the sanding and shaping process later on, so that extra material acts as an essential safety net. After the rough cut, the horn is still pretty uneven. So they use a rasp and a file to gradually, and I mean very slowly, reduce those uneven edges. Picture the craftsman with a file in one hand and a caliper in the other, constantly checking the thickness. The golden rule here is to remove just a tiny bit of material at a time. One wrong move and the whole piece is wasted. But through this meticulous process, those sharp, rough corners start converting into premium, soft curves. Now, what's really interesting here is this machine, known as a forming jig. Buffalo horn is naturally curved, right? It's round, but for a purse panel, we need it perfectly flat. So inside this forming jig, using controlled heating and very precise pressure, they tame that unruly horn without burning or breaking it. By the time it comes out, it's effectively a workable, completely flat panel. All right, the shaping is done. Now we're moving into what is definitely the most visually satisfying part of the whole process. Step 3, the secret to the shine. That incredible shine doesn't just happen by magic. It's the result of a systematic, progressive sanding sequence. First, coarse grit sandpaper takes out the deep scratches and tool marks. Next, medium grit gradually makes the remaining roughness disappear. And finally, fine grit wipes out those microscopic scratches that you might not even see, but you can definitely feel. And the absolute key here, between every single one of these stages, the material is thoroughly cleaned and inspected to ensure absolutely no scratches from the previous grit are left behind. And that brings us to the real truth of the craft, beautifully summed up by this philosophy. The secret to good polishing is not just the polish. Actually, the secret is a proper sanding sequence. Without that foundation, no amount of polish applied on top is going to work. It really shows the extreme patience required from the artisan. And then, we get to that magical moment on the buffing wheel. As soon as that polishing compound hits the dull surface and touches the spinning wheel, it transforms into a deep, glossy finish in a matter of seconds. The brilliant natural colors and unique patterns hidden deep inside the horn suddenly pop into view. This is the exact moment where you look at it and realize, wow, this rough piece of material has finally become a premium, decorative luxury item. So the horn panel is perfect, but now we have to match it with our base material. Let's look at step 4, preparing the leather canvas. Tracing the paper template, carefully cutting the outlines, refining the corners, this is all done entirely by hand. But the most crucial job here is marking the evenly spaced holes for stitching. These measurements have to be exact. Even a 1 millimeter difference will completely throw off the symmetry. These tiny details and precise dimensions are exactly what separates true luxury craftsmanship from something mass-produced. Now, after the leather is cut, the edges look really raw. This is where a technique called burnishing comes into play. Using a specialized tool, the raw cut edges are compacted and smoothed out to an intense degree. If they skipped this specific step, it wouldn't matter how expensive the leather was. The edges would look rough, and the entire purse would just feel completely unfinished. All right, it's time for the finale, step 5. The synthesis and reveal, where these two perfectly prepared, totally different materials finally come together. So the crucial point here comes down to this exact number, 1 to 2 millimeters. When that gleaming horn panel is placed onto the leather base, the margin for error is essentially 0. Just a 1 or 2 millimeter mistake in alignment will throw the whole design out of balance. And if you try to adjust it after the glue is applied, you've practically ruined the entire product permanently. Once the alignment is locked in, the cross-stitching begins, which is an incredible skill in itself. Cross-stitching requires absolutely perfect tension. If the artisan pulls the thread too tight, the leather deforms and puckers. But leave it even a tiny bit loose, and the stitch line looks incredibly uneven and amateurish. Very slowly and deliberately, the artisan develops this clean, continuous stitch line, which is really the heart and soul of a handmade piece. Now, those flat pieces finally start taking on a three-dimensional shape. The leather panels are folded, and the edges are carefully aligned. The sides and bottom corners get their final stitches. Then the interior lining is inserted, because a premium bag has to be flawless on the inside too, giving it that final touch of professionalism. And finally, that shining metal clasp hardware is installed. But wait, is it ready to ship? Not quite. In a premium workshop, before anything gets packed up, it has to survive a rigorous final quality check. Is the horn surface completely smooth? Are the edges perfectly finished? Is even a single stitch inconsistent? Does the clasp lock with a satisfying smooth click? Is the interior spotless? And most importantly, did they achieve overall symmetry? A true luxury item isn't considered finished until it passes every single demand on this checklist. And when it passes all those tests, what we're left with is an ultimate piece of art. This whole journey leaves us with a really profound question. If a rough, dirty piece of animal horn can become a flawless luxury masterpiece, what hidden potential lies within the raw materials around us every single day? The real beauty of this transformation isn't just in the final purse, it's in the immense patience, the vision, and the countless meticulous steps it took to get there. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer and exploring this beautiful journey from raw to refined. We'll see you next time with another fascinating deep dive.